Well, hey there guys, and welcome back. On this week's show, we're making another box. Well, today on the show, we will continue our box building series with box number 4. Now, boxes may seem a little dull, but if you mix up the designs and change things up a bit, they are a fantastic way to hone your skills. So don't discount the boxes. But this one here today is going to start over at the bench with a little bit of scrap walnut. Well, I had this piece of walnut up in the rack and I have jointed one edge over at the router table just to give us that one flat reference point. The first thing I think I want to do is I want to rip this into a 3-inch width. Now before we do any more cutting, we want to cut the dado that is going to hold the bottom for our box. So I have my fence set for 1/4 inch. I have my blade height set for 3/16, and we're going to place a dado all the way along the length at the bottom. Well, you know what? It's going to be just over 1/8 of an inch wide. We need it wide enough to house some hardboard that we're going to use for the bottom of this box. So let's get that dado cut. And as well, while we're at it, I'm going to cut the rabbet in the top that is going to eventually house our lid. I'm just looking at this. I'm thinking I may do this, again, 3/16 of an inch deep on the blade depth and maybe 1/4 of an inch down from the top. So, yeah, that sounds about good. I'm kind of flying by the seat of my pants on this one. So we will place that rabbet 3/16 of an inch deep, 1/4 inch down from the top. Well, at this point, I want to cut our pieces to their final lengths and widths. So what I want for this box, I want it to be 6 inches long and 3 inches wide. So that is what I'm going to cut these. But the way I'm going to cut it, I'm going to cut it 3 inches, 6 inches, 3 inches, 6 inches. And I'm going to number each piece. The reason being is because we want the grain to line up all the way around on the box. Okay, and now using the miter sled or the table saw sled that we made here on the show for these boxes, we will cut all of our miters. And all you need to do, as I've shown you here before, line up the top corner with the kerf here so that it lines up perfectly, and then you could follow through with the cut. So we're going to do this on all 4 pieces of our box, and then we can do a dry test fit. So the dry fit looks pretty good, and now we need to cut the bottom or the base of this box, which is basically going to be the interior dimension, and we will add 3/16 of an inch to each side. We'll cut it a little bit shy just so that it's not a super tight fit, but we can get that cut and do a dry fit of that as well. Okay, so we've cut that bottom. It fits just fine, and what we need to do now is essentially we're going to sand the inside of each one of these pieces, and we're going to apply a couple coats of shellac to those. To this piece here, if you remember, I've been using some of the flocked materials from Spectro Coatings Corporation, and that's what we're going to do on this one as well, because I really love the effect of it and I think it looks fantastic. So I'm going to go over to see some of the samples that they've sent me. I'm going to use a little bit of spray adhesive on here and attach a piece of the material onto our base so that it has a nice soft bottom. So I've cut this really nice piece of, it's like a rich burgundy. I love this color. I decided I'm not going to use spray adhesive. I'm going to try something different and just use some Elmer's white school glue. So I'm just going to apply a thin coat of that here onto our board, and we can lay our material down on top of that and let that set up overnight. Well, while we're waiting for things to dry, I have a piece of 1/8 inch hardboard, and I've kind of drawn this on it. And what this is 1 inch tall, it's 5/8 wide, and 1/4 inch down, I've made this kind of a design. It's really nothing spectacular. I've also brought this in here 1/4 of an inch. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this over to the scroll saw, going to cut this out, and then I'm going to come back and show you what I have in mind. Well, I've got 4 pieces of maple here. They are 5/8 by 5/8 by 1 inch long. And I'm just going to take this little template that we drew out and cut out. I'm going to line it up on this piece and trace it out. Just like that. Now, what you want to do is turn it 90 degrees and then line it up so that the toes point to each other. I'm calling this the toe right there. And you'll line it back up and trace it again. Okay, and with those traced, I'm going to take it over to the scroll saw and cut it out. This is a compound cut, so I will cut the one side. I'm going to put it back together and tape it back together, flip it 90 degrees, and cut this side. And when I get that done, I'll show you what you get out of it. Well, I decided to go away from the maple and went with cherry to make it a little bit of an easier cut. But what you end up with after a compound cut is you end up with kind of this little squashed down cabriolet leg. Now, this is going to need a little bit of sanding to give it some shape, but I'm going to make 4 of these, and these will eventually be the legs of our box. And with that, those 4 are done. And I got to tell you, they look really great. I love it. They've got a really great shape, and I think they're going to really add a nice touch to this box. Well, now that everything is dried up, it's now time to glue this thing together. And for that, we're going to need some 1.5 inch wide masking tape. Well, you guys have seen me use this method before, and it's no different than you've seen me do. I'm using a straight edge here to help me line up the bottoms of our box. And I'm just going to apply some adhesive here, some glue. We're going to use it sparingly because we want to try to avoid squeeze out if we can help it. So we're just going to get a little bit on there. And now what you want to do, as you've seen me do before, is line up those edges, make sure they're perfect, and push them down into the tape. Now remember, we put numbers on these pieces earlier. You really want to pay attention to those numbers because that is what's going to allow your grain to line up. So there we go, there's the next piece. And then we'll get our last piece on here. Like that. Now this is the first one that we've done that actually has a bottom that is put into a dado. The rest of them did not have that. So this is one of the differences of this build here. And let me just show you what we're going to do with that. Just like we always have, we're going to start putting this thing upright to hold it together. I forgot to put glue on the end part. There we go. We're going to start folding this together. But when we get it to this point here, we need to get our bottom into its dado. So the bottom will go into its dado. We're not going to glue this in. I like to keep it loose. And we're going to pull this around, squish it down into place, pull the tape tight, and then rub it down. And there we go. That looks fantastic. Okay, so I'm going to turn it upside down so that none of that squeeze out that's inside is running down onto our flocked material. And I'm just going to get inside there with a wet cotton swab, and we're going to clean up the squeeze out on the inside of the box. Okay, so I'm going to get the rest of the squeeze out cleaned up, and then we just have to let this dry. Well, it's the next day, and if this isn't dry by now, we have a problem. But what I'm going to do, we'll remove the tape which clamped it together. We're going to give our box a good sanding all over, and then from there, we can glue our little cabriolet legs on there. All right, and at this point, we can just let those completely dry up. While we're waiting for the legs to dry, we can concentrate on the lid. And what I have here is a piece of 3/4 inch thick curly maple. I've cut it to the dimension so it will fit in our rabbet. And I've also drilled a 3/8 hole, 3/8 of an inch deep right in the middle. I'll show you what that's for in just a little bit. Well, the first thing that we're going to do here is I want to mark from the bottom 3/8 of an inch up all the way around. Well, we're not going to do anything fancy here. I just want a bit of an arc on this lid. I don't want it to be a square box. So I've set up my French curves here with some masking tape for reference, just the way I want it here, and I'm just going to curve the top of this lid. And once I get it marked on this side, I will also place the same markings of that curve on the opposite side as well. So in order to get that curve across the top, we're going to use the belt sander. Now it's way too close for your hands to get in there to sand this. It's just too dangerous. So I've used some double-sided tape and just glued up a block of cherry on the back to give me something to hold on to distance myself from the belt while we're shaping this lid. Well, once I got the kind of a dome shape here that I wanted, I gave this whole thing a good sanding. I'm going to sand it a little more because I can see a few more lines here that I don't like, but I'm going to take those out. It's not that big of a deal. But this 3/8 hole in the top, I went over to the lathe and took a piece of curly maple, and I was able to turn this little, I'm going to call it a finial, you know, because that's kind of what it is. But anyway, this is going to get glued right in here in the top. And then with our cabriolet legs dried up, and look at that, that looks amazing. That looks like a little mini chest kind of a thing. But anyway, with our cabriolet legs dried up, then your lid will just sit in the top here, and check that out. Like, how elegant is that? That's honestly, that turned out better than I ever thought it would. But now all we need to do is apply a finish. Well, the finish for this box could not be simpler. All it is I have given it coats of shellac, just wiped it on, 3 coats, sanding with 600 grit paper in between coats. And for the final wipe on coat, the 3rd coat, once it's dry, we're just going to rub it over here with a piece of fine steel wool to take away some of the sheen of that shellac. Now, once we get this done, we're just going to seal it in with a nice quality paste wax, and that will give it back a little bit of its sheen, but also give it a nice smoothness to the touch, as well as some protection. It's a great finish for boxes. I really like it. And most of the boxes that I do have that style or that type of finish on them. So let's get this, this one waxed up, and then we can call this one pretty much done. And there you have it. Box number 4 in our box making series. Guys, this one here, while it was not inspired by any design that was in the book 52 Boxes in 52 Weeks, it was inspired, or I guess that book inspired me to design my own. As well, this is an older viewer request. One of the viewers quite some time ago requested that I make a small keepsake box with feet. And this is pretty much what I came up with, being that nice walnut box with the cabriolet legs. They're kind of stumpy cabriolet legs, but they really suit this box. And it just goes to show you that, you know what, you can really mix things up and get a beautiful product. Now the interior of this box, once again, I'm blown away by how great that flocked material looks from Spectro Coatings Corporation. And they were kind enough to provide me with some samples to use here in the shop, but as well, they have provided a discount code, which I will post down below along with the link to their Etsy page where you can purchase those flocked materials for yourself. And if you use the code that I will put down below, you will get 30% off on your orders over 20 bucks. So again, that 30% is better in your pocket, and if you are hoping to try these flocked materials for your shop, well then 30% off is the way to go. Now this is the first time that I used anything other than a spray adhesive for this flocked material, and I have to say I really like the way that white glue worked out. It was nice and smooth. It didn't soak into the material hardly at all. It gave a nice clean adhesion. It worked really well. So there's kudos to the white glue because it did a great job of adding that flocking material to the bottom. And I love that color, that kind of burgundy maroon kind of a color. It really sets it off the box. All in all, guys, I'm very pleased with how this turned out, and truthfully, this thing is gorgeous. Guys, I want to thank you so much for tuning in this week. I hope you've enjoyed this 4th box in the series. If you haven't already, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel and click that bell, and then you won't miss the notifications of future episodes of the show. You know what, guys, it's been a blast. I love this box. I hope you're going to try this one for yourself. I really hope that you've enjoyed the content that I've brought you today. But more importantly, guys, I hope you're going to join me again next week when I bring you yet another woodworking video.